So I'm going to do a response video. I don't do a lot of these, but these are kind of fun, regarding the topic of polyamory, or specifically non-monogamy. Now, I know I said a while back that I would not be discussing woman topics on this YouTube channel as much, but I also said I would not be completely abandoning the topic. So here we go. I have brought up this video here. It's about 2 years old. It is Bret Weinstein, who I like. I think he's a smart guy. I think he has valid analysis for a lot of things. But he's going to talk about why he thinks polyamory is a terrible idea. Now, before we get into this, I have to be clear on the definitions here of what polyamory means. Polyamory, in terms of what most people talk about this on the internet, particularly in the red pill world, is what I have talked about at my blogs in terms of beta male polyamory. And that is where you have these two little skinny, wimpy, nerdy guys and this ugly, strong, dominant woman who's kicking both of their asses. And all the red pill guys point at those kinds of scenarios and say, see, polyamory is terrible. Don't do polyamory. Well, yes, don't do that kind of polyamory. That kind of polyamory is for beta males, not for alpha males, and certainly not for alpha 2.0s. So I'm not per polyamory per se, because often it ends up in those scenarios. I'm for non-monogamy. And any form of non-monogamy is better than monogamy, because we know for a fact monogamy doesn't work. And it hasn't worked for a long, long time. So obviously, under an alpha male context, polyamory would mean that you have multiple MLTRs. You're dating multiple women, all of whom are attractive. Some FBs, some MLTRs, what have you. Or you could have an OLTR or OLTR wife like I have, and you have FBs on the side. That's alpha male non-monogamy instead of what is typically called polyamory. But what he's talking about here in the video is really non-monogamy on the overall, and so I will address his points. Let's have some fun.
I do not think polyamorous folks are on the right track. I think that what they're up to is, I know from the ones who are serious about it and talk about it, that even within the polyamorous community, there's a recognition about just how difficult it is to make it work. But I don't really want to interfere with their right to do it. I would like to be able to talk about whether it's a good idea, whether it has societal implications that we should be aware of. But
now, when people say societal implications, and I've written an entire article about this called "What If Everyone Did That?" And that's one of the things that people bring up when you talk about non-monogamy is, what if everyone did that? Well, what if everyone in the whole world did polyamory, which will never happen? Are you insane? People know monogamy doesn't work now. What percentage of people do hardcore polyamory? It's a very small percentage even now when people know monogamy doesn't work and when we're in the middle of a collapsing Western civilization. So that's not going to happen. You will always have people who embrace monogamy. Needy people, jealous people, religious people, old people, low sex drive people. You're always going to have a lot of people pursue monogamy. That will never happen. So all these doomsday scenarios of, oh my God, well, if everybody did this, then you'll have 5% of the alpha males who fuck 90% of the girls, and none of the betas will get laid because that's not going to happen. That will literally never happen. Don't worry about that. It's a silly excuse. People aren't going to suddenly embrace polyamory, 90, 80, 100% of human beings. That's not how human beings work.
How do you feel like they're not on the right track and isn't everyone's track? If we can accept trans folk and we can accept women to subscribe to cultural norms and wearing high heels and makeup in the workplace, why can't we accept polyamorous behavior? And what's so
That's what I'm telling you, is that
difficult?
Though I personally would counsel somebody, if, and I have had this conversation with many students, for example, I would counsel them away from it because I think it actually prioritizes one thing, which is desirable, but that the cost of it is very, very high.
What does it prioritize?
It prioritizes not locking yourself into a single sexual relationship.
And why is that bad? You don't want to be locked into a single sexual relationship. Matter of fact, Bret is about to tell you why.
And I think there's a way in which there is a terror that surrounds locking yourself into a single sexual relationship. And part of the terror goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation. If you think that beauty is maxed out at 20 and then it wanes over life, then as a woman, you're trapped in this terrible situation where you've got this power long before you know what to do with it, and it's going to evaporate, so you better capitalize on it. And if you're a man, you're very frightened that you're going to get into a relationship and then you're going to watch this person that you love fall apart in front of your eyes, and you're going to be, you're going to be caught in that situation.
He just described long-term monogamy. Doesn't that sound great? So he's selling why monogamy would be a bad idea. Now, what he might be implying, I can't read his mind, but I've discussed and debated the topic of monogamy so many times, so many people, I can kind of see where they're going before they go there. What he might be suggesting is, well, if a woman's looks deteriorate, then the best thing she can do is when she's 20, marry and get monogamous with a guy, and then she's set for life, and she'll be with him forever, and he'll take care of her forever. What's the problem with that? 76+% divorce rates. The odds are overwhelming she'll get divorced, and she'll be single again, and maybe she'll get divorced and single when she's in her 30s, 40s, 50s, and she's past her SMB prime, and then she has a big problem because monogamy doesn't work. But he just basically sold you on why monogamy is a bad idea. But let's listen.
And I don't think this is the reality of a pair bond. I think the reality of a pair bond is way better than we fear.
Okay, so he clarified that. He doesn't think that's the reality, but let's see what he means by that.
But that because we've got this overly simplistic mythology surrounding it, a lot of people are trying to solve that problem. How do I not get locked into that relationship that's going to trap me with somebody who's
How do I not get bored?
decaying in front of me?
It's not overly simplistic. It is simplistic. If you are monogamous, you're only allowed to have sex with one woman. If you're legally married, traditionally monogamously married, you are, in theory, only allowed to have sex with one woman for the rest of your life. That is not overly simplistic. That is the literal fact. You're only allowed to have sex with her. What if she says no to sex? Then you have sex with nobody because you're not allowed to cheat. And you can't have sex with her. So now you have sex with no one. That is not an oversimplification. Those are the facts.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's a decaying thing. I would push back against that. I would say people just want more variety. They're attracted to other people and they want to act on that. And
good for you, Joe. Good. I'm impressed with Joe here. Yes. Human beings, men in particular, are biologically wired to want sexual variety. That doesn't mean you can't be in a long-term loving relationship. I'm married and I love my wife more than anything else. She's great. And I want to be with her for the rest of my life if I can. And I want other women besides her because I'm a man and that's how I'm biologically wired.
And if they find a partner who's also willing to do that and they stay together, I don't see what would be the issue if they wanted to do it.
Well, I'm telling you specifically that. I don't want to stop them from doing it, but I do want people to think very carefully about the issues. I mean, I'm just speaking as one guy who's lived one life.
Good for you.
The value that I get out of having as close to perfect security at home as I can have in a relationship. I mean,
does he have perfect security? His odds of divorce are not high. Really? Robert Kiyosaki's getting divorced right now. Chris Rock just got divorced. There are a lot of very intelligent men who really knew what they were doing who are getting divorced because long-term monogamy doesn't work. Do you really think he has perfect security? I'm sure he loves his wife. I'm sure his wife is an amazing person. I believe his wife is sitting right over there. That's great. But we're not talking about love. We're talking about security. Does he really have that? Maybe he has that. Maybe he doesn't. And I would submit he doesn't 100% know. Because how are you going to know how your wife's going to feel in 10 years?
Heather and I have been all over the world. We've taken our kids into parts of the Amazon that are 4 hours by boat from the nearest road, right? This is not a boring relationship. This relationship has been a nonstop adventure.
Right, but no one's trying to push polyamory on you.
Right. I wouldn't say that that's true. I would say that
People are?
Not as an individual. But what I would say is
I am. Not polyamory, but he should open up his marriage. Now, really quick about his amazing marriage. That's awesome that they travel together. That's fucking great. Is that the typical marriage? No, that's an unusual marriage, number one. Number two, sex. Can he fuck other women when he wants to? Because I know he wants to because he's a man. Is he allowed to do that? How does he feel when he's not allowed to do that? How does he feel when he goes to his wife and he wants to have sex with her and she says no? Because that's what wives do once you've been married to them for longer than 3 years in a monogamous relationship, as I've shown the data hundreds of times at my blogs. He's not mentioning that part.
they are promoting an idea that this is the sophisticated way to live.
It's the wave of the future.
If they,
Really?
Yeah. And
How
that
common is this? Is this?
well, I mean, you mentioned sex at dawn yourself. And so the idea is,
Yeah, but Chris is my friend and he's crazy.
there you go. But what I would
But
say,
he believes it. He might be right.
he does believe it, and I
For him,
actually,
it is right.
I have been convinced by a friend, who I had a long-standing argument with on this topic, and what he convinced me is that
A friend who is polyamorous.
yes, a friend who is polyamorous, and this friend has convinced me that it can be accomplished, that there's somewhere to get, but he acknowledges that it actually, in the case that he points to, took several generations, literally several generations, to arrive at a stable situation.
Well, you guys,
Yes. The reason he's talking about, well, I know some people and they made polyamory work. And again, I don't like the word polyamory. I don't like polyamory specifically. I prefer non-monogamy, which means you have an OLTR, MLTRFB, as we discussed it out the 2.0. But the reason he's saying, I know these people have a non-monogamous relationship. Okay, they've made it work, but it's been really hard. Yeah, because they were doing it wrong. Unfortunately, there is no template outside of my content on how to do these relationships. So people have to figure this out when they don't know what the fuck to do. In monogamous relationships, there's a template to follow, and people understand the template, even though it doesn't work. If they had my materials, if they had my books, they followed my systems, it would be super, super, super easy. And there are thousands of alpha male 2.0s all over the planet who are doing these systems right now, and they're very easy and they're not difficult at all because they have my templates.
have a wonderful relationship, though. I know many people who have terrible, terrible relationships, and for them, the notion of monogamy seems absurd. It seems like a trap that you get stuck in. You grow to resent each other, and then you get sick of each other, and then you fight in court until you figure out who gets all the money.
Correct. Monogamy doesn't work.
Right. I would say, those people shouldn't be together, obviously.
I think you're right, yeah.
But then,
Okay, that's not the problem. That's what people say. Well, they shouldn't have gotten married. No. That's why people who get divorced get traditionally monogamously married again. They said, oh, I fucked up. I married the wrong person. So now I'll marry the right person, and this time it'll work. Second divorces have higher divorce rates than first divorces because it's not the person, it's the system under which you're involving yourself. It's the system where, especially with traditional monogamous marriage, which is what he's talking about, where you move in with a woman, you can only have sex with her, she can only have sex with you. If either person wants to break up, and usually it's the woman, she can leave you whenever she wants for any reason she wants, and she takes half your money and all of your kids and all that junk. The type of woman you marry is not relevant to that system. The system is the problem, not necessarily who you marry. So that statement is incorrect. That is an oversimplification.
then there's a conflation between polyamory and promiscuity.
Right.
That just a free-for-all, a sex with strangers free-for-all, is different from the kind of careful approach to polyamory that this friend takes, which still looks extraordinarily difficult to pull off, given what human beings are.
It's not difficult because this person didn't know how to do it, and this woman, who I believe is Bret Weinstein's wife, has never tried it, so she doesn't know. That's the other thing. Have you ever tried this, Miss Weinstein? Have you tried it? How difficult do you think it is? Do you have my materials, very specific proven systems that we know for a fact work? No. All you're looking at is your marriage versus polyamory, which you would never do.
From a jealousy perspective.
But isn't monogamy extraordinarily difficult to pull off? I mean, isn't
Exactly.
the rate of divorce in this country alone, it's somewhere around 50%.
76%.
And Chris Rock famously said that's just 50% who had the courage to leave. How many cowards stay?
Well,
Right.
but this
Also
is
true.
this is part of the point about novelty. We are living in a situation where our narratives sell us a false picture of our opportunities.
Do you see what he just did there? Joe Rogan pointed out semi-correctly, actually it's worse than what he said, in terms of monogamy not working, traditional monogamous marriage not working, sky-high divorce rates, and the people who stay together, as I've analyzed with all the data at my blogs for the past 10 plus years, most people who stay together are in unhappy marriages, so it really doesn't work. What did Bret Weinstein do as a response to that? He ignored it and dodged the topic and changed the topic to something else. Now he's talking about novelty. He didn't address that at all because he knows Joe Rogan is right, because he knows monogamy doesn't work.
Our narratives are partially driven by an economy that wants us to be insecure enough to spend money like crazy. And so I'm not telling people that they should live one way or the other. I'm telling them that they should understand what their real options are. And polyamory as an experiment is all well and good. But what happens when you introduce children into the mix?
Okay, now this is another common excuse. Well, what if you have kids? First of all, Most people doing this kind of thing don't have kids and don't want kids or don't want kids yet. So that's a non-issue for most of the people doing this. Now, if you want to settle down with children, there's an answer. It's called OLTR marriage. You have your kids. You have a discussion about kids before you get serious. You don't show your kids what you're doing until they're much older, ideally high school or later, and you proceed with discretion. There are millions of non-monogamous couples who are making that system work with kids. I personally know many. It works fine. Now, does that mean when you have kids, you can go out and bang every woman in town? No, you probably shouldn't. And that's probably what he's implying. But he's making a black and white issue. You're polyamorous and being sexually promiscuous, therefore you shouldn't have kids. That's not the case. You can be non-monogamous and be very responsible and very controlled. I am. I'm a father of two. My kids are grown, but I raised two kids under this model. They turned out just fine. So incorrecto again.
Right. That's very, very different.
It's very different because children are so costly to raise and because human males are wired to fear raising offspring that they themselves did not produce genetically. Now, I don't think it makes sense to actually care very much about your genes and advancing their interests. I think this is something evolution has stuck us with that is not valuable. It's actually destructive.
It's
but
something we can
nonetheless,
potentially move past.
but we are wired for it.
Okay, Bret, and I've responded to this excuse and objection a billion fucking times. Bret, that's why God invented paternity tests. You can go to Walgreens and get a paternity test for $20. You can actually get a paternity test of a pregnant woman before the baby is born, so you know the baby is yours or not. You don't ever have to wonder about this. You will always know your kids are yours. It's very, very simple. That's a bullshit excuse. And of course, if you're dating someone in a serious OLTR relationship and she gets pregnant by another guy and doesn't tell you, that's a serious problem. You will find out. You'll have a horrible breakup. But then you have to ask yourself in the mirror why you were so stupid to get into a serious relationship with a woman who is that evil and deceptive. That's on you. And by the way, that scenario I just laid out is extremely rare. Matter of fact, I haven't heard of it. I haven't heard of it happening in real life. I'm sure it has. But I've talked to thousands of people about these topics. I have not heard one couple run into this problem where the wife or OLTR girlfriend secretly went off and had unprotected sex with some random dude. The guy got her pregnant. She knew it was possibly the other guy's. She convinced the other guy it was his baby, and then she got found out. I've never seen that happen. Sure it does, but I've never seen it. So this is all BS.
And so what I'm expecting to happen is if you have a large-scale experiment in polyamory, what it's going to do is it is going to break down into polygyny.
Polygyny is basically polygamy, where one man is married to multiple women. The man can fuck all the girls, but the women can't fuck other men. That will not occur in the Western world. I've said this 1,000 times. Western women don't go for this model because you get guys occasionally who say, well, I want to date a bunch of girls, but they can only date me. I'm going to set up that kind of system. That will never work in the Western world. Western women will not tolerate that bullshit. They will not put up with that. Even if you make it work, I have never seen relationships last like that longer than 8 months or 9 months. 9 months. I saw one that went 9 months before the woman either breaks up with you or fucks someone else to make it more fair. So what he is saying is complete bullshit. That might happen in places like Africa or the Middle East. And there are some places where you have those things, Africa and Middle East, but not in the Western world. Women, modern day Western women, will never agree to that long term, ever, ever, never, ever. Even if they lie to the guy and cheat on him behind his back. Kendra, when she was living with Hugh Hefner in the Playboy Mansion, if you remember who that was, would sneak out in the middle of the night to go fuck other dudes and sneak back in before he realized it. She never got caught by him, but the other two girls knew about it, wrote about it later. Women are not going to put up with that. They will either dump you or they will fuck other guys to make it more fair. So that's not a concern.
Single motherhood as men leave these relationships in order to engage in perhaps more polyamory with younger women. And it's going to be yet one more thing that is unevenly distributed between the sexes.
Okay, the single motherhood thing is an interesting issue. I haven't had anyone bring that up before. Yes, that would be a problem. But again, who is responsible for this? You need to be responsible with these things. Yes, you need to wear condoms. Women should be on birth control. Hell, I've talked about that 1,000 times. I have all kinds of techniques that I've taught you guys about this. yes, you need to be careful. And yeah, frankly, if you get a woman pregnant because you were stupid and just came inside her and you didn't give a shit, then you do kind of need to help support that child. Now, I do not like how child support is handled by the government. I've written articles about this, but you are responsible for that. So you should have to pay for that kid to some degree. Now, if it was a pure accident and you didn't want that kid, that's a different scenario. But if you were just stupid and had sex with 20 women and got them all pregnant, that's on you.
So choose your mate wisely.
Well, choose your mate wisely, but we don't even realize that we are interfering with your ability to do that in ways that we don't intuit. We have a landscape in which nobody is paying attention to the way we are interfering in the normal processes that would cause you to find a mate with whom you might have a very rewarding
What
lifelong
processes are you referring to?
Well, let me take an absurd one.
Okay.
We have no idea what effect deodorant is having on us choosing the right mate.
That's probably
We
true.
do know that
Right.
in studies that there are molecules that you can't consciously tell you're detecting that do affect mate choice.
That's
And we
actually-
know that
that's
we're
true.
interfering with that stuff.
Well, we know that birth control affects that as well.
Yes,
Women's
we do.
ability to
Hormonal
smell.
birth control,
Yeah.
specifically. Yep.
Women's
So now they're going to talk about mate selection and things like that. I'm going to fast forward the video a little bit. I don't disagree with what he's saying. Yeah, I mean, all kinds of modern day things like drug use, diet, deodorant, birth control, that does affect how you choose a mate. But that's not really relevant to the discussion. I'm going to fast forward a little bit here.
Spend, I don't know if it was a year as an experiment, not work.
shave the armpits thing. Like if
Industry of
I shave my
I don't
armpits.
know how much they make
Let's
per
be
year
honest.
selling us these things because we're afraid of our own human
smell,
smell,
right?
right?
But smell. You
Right.
smell them. Change who hooks up with who.
How much would it? And how much would it change if we actually learned that there's a difference between hotness and beauty, and we actually allowed little girls to recognize that maybe they weren't so interested in being hot, because although it gets you a lot of attention, it's a kind of attention that's a dead end, right? How much would that change who ends up with whom? I mean, a lot of
Again, I don't disagree. I more or less agree with what he's saying, but this is not about monogamy.
who
or
ends up with whom
polyamory or
at the
whatever.
moment is presumably dictated by people. Is I want to see a world in which the noise of the way the market influences how we interact with each other and the notions that get promoted as sophisticated, where that noise is reduced so that people can really begin to detect the patterns in their life. Actually, this worked for me. I dated in this way and this worked for me. I dated in that way and it didn't work for me. It wasn't rewarding. That begins to tell you something.
So he didn't make any compelling points there. I'm going to rewind it here. He didn't make one compelling point backing up his point that non-monogamy is bad and monogamy is flawed but will work. He didn't make one solid, rational point. I just refuted every point he made. And he's an intelligent guy. I like Bret Weinstein. I think I've watched several of his videos. I think he makes good analysis. I think he's very rational. But as I've talked about and shown a million times, men are very irrational when it comes to the topic of monogamy and even things like marriage. For God's sake, Scott Adams, who wrote an entire article several years ago about why marriage is a terrible idea and men shouldn't do it, and I analyzed that article and responded to it many years ago when he wrote it, he just got fucking married again. And this is not some, just like Bret Weinstein, this is not some young, dumb, inexperienced beta male. This is Scott Adams, who knows better. So very intelligent men who are otherwise somewhat rational sometimes, although Scott Adams has lost his mind with the Trump stuff. I've talked about that before. Can't think rationally about this issue. They just can't. They're completely irrational about it, and they will go out of their way and twist logic into pretzels in order to try to make their points. What I suggest you do is watch this video right here. This video is the 47 objections that people use to defend monogamy and saying they don't want to do non-monogamy. I go through every single objection, including most of the objections he used here. I cover every objection. Watch that video, and I will see you in the next video. Have fun.